So first I'll explain what movable is. So if you look in the physical properties, you can turn on movable, and now it will be physically simulated, which means it will move with gravity, it will collide into stuff, it will bounce off of things. If you don't have movable on, things can clip into each other, it won't move from gravity, it won't collide, and stuff like that. You can also have that on the group. So if you group these up, now if I make the group movable, then the group itself moves around, and I can put it at a funny angle. And it uses all of its contents as how it collides with things. So it needs at least one sculpt really for this movable stuff to work on a group, which we have here. But if you had movable off on the group and scope in here and turn on movable for an object inside of the group, then that object is physically simulated, but the group isn't physically simulated. So then that object falls and the rest of the group doesn't fall. And then if we make the group movable as well, they'll both fall, but if you put that at a funny angle again, but they'll move independently of each other. If we add a chip, so this chip has no way of becoming physically movable. If we turn on X-ray, we can see how the chip moves, and that's where the actual group is moving. And you can see that it's actually moving. This cube on the left isn't movable, so it's moving perfectly with the whole group. So if you had other non-movable objects, they would move with the whole group as well. And if you did like that, they'd all move as one object. But then the movable thing inside of the group will do its own thing. So a common thing is to have a connector. So maybe this is a piece of hair or whatever, and give it some springiness so that it can kind of move with the group, but still flap about by itself at the same time. Like that. Now we get on to gadgets. So gadgets, a common one is the mover. So let's snap this onto the surface of the group. So now it's going to move. Let's just see where that's moving. It's going to move in that direction. Let's make it non-movable as well. So the mover is going to move the whole group in that direction, just like that. And because the group isn't movable and nothing in it is, it won't collide with anything and bounce off because it's not being physically simulated. So then if you want it to collide, then you turn on movable so it's physically simulated, and then it's going to fall with gravity. So let's put it down there. But then it will collide with things because it's being actually simulated for physics. Now if we scope in and just plug that on one of the objects, that will be affected by the mover and the rest won't. And now neither of these are movable, but because you're actively saying to this object, move over there, then that object will move over there even though it's within the same group. Something to note though is even if you rotate the group, if you animate the group, let's say, to being down here over some time, if I turn that mover off so it doesn't affect anything, it will all move with the group because none of it's movable, it's all keeping up just fine. If I turn this on, it'll do its own thing and ignore the group because it's kind of this, the movers and rotators kind of make it pseudo-movable so that it can use the physics engine to actually move stuff around. So then it ignores the rest of the group and moves by itself. So if you want the whole group to move as one, don't put it on an object inside it. Put it on the whole group like that. And now you can see it's actually affecting the whole group because it's not centered on one of these objects. It's centered in the actual group. So if I turn off the animation, the whole group is now being moved by the mover. But then the animations like keyframes and stuff kind of override things like that. But what's actually happening, if I leave this off, what's actually happening is when you surface snap something to another object, it's adding this special wire to that object from affected objects, and a chip has a similar one where it says apply to object. So if I surface, if I take this out, if I surface snap this chip to the group and then pull it away, it has this special wire coming from apply to object to the group. This is so that you can have everything in this window applied to that group. So if I put a mover in there, I don't have to add a special wire to it. It will just know that because the chip that's in affects the group, so should the mover affect the group. So now the whole group is moving. If you want to, say, have this object rotate, if you added a rotator to that object like that, and do that, so that will rotate around as you want it to, but it doesn't move with the group, so you have to kind of ground it to that group. So if I copy that, we don't need that, then this isn't movable, so it will move with the group, and then I can just use a connector, like a bolt, and like adjust it or whatever. And now when the group moves, this object here moves with it, which drags this along with it as it's rotating. So now it's rotating while the group overall is moving. Let's say we just want to animate this moving left and right or something. I'll just do this quickly like that, move it over there, and use a signal generator to have it move left and right over time. So because it's inside a group, then the position that the keyframe uses is relative to wherever that group happens to be. So then it can move left and right while the whole group is moving down. This applies also to like scaling, or rotating, because when you store the position of something, it's actually storing the whole scene transform, or the whole transform. So it's the position, rotation, and scale. So now if I move over there to show position changing as well, so it's still staying relative to the group, but also like scaling up and stuff. Whereas if I took this out of the group, then it's still moving wherever I put it. It's moving relative to whatever it started off as. So if I now move this and rotate it like that, then it's going to move over there instead of over there, because the keyframe updates when you change the transform of the thing it's recorded on. And you can like scale it or move it down here, and the same thing would happen. It would just all adjust. But then you can still put it back into the group again, and now it'll move with the group. You can actually use a chip and tweak the chip and just apply to any object you want. So if I scope out, I can now apply to the group, and the gadgets inside here will apply to the group itself while the chip is still inside it. So then you can have your mover, and probably want it local space, and I'll have it pointing forwards, and now the mover is pushing it forwards like that. But because it's got gravity and stuff, you can turn the gravity off. I'll just double tap X to select everything in the group, and then make it ignore gravity because it's like a flying plane thing, and now it will just move forwards. But because it's movable, it will collide with stuff. So it collides with stuff like that. And because it's movable, it will also create collision events. So then the impact sensor and impact sensor will be able to detect those collisions when it collides with stuff like that. You can surface snap a gadget to a thing, like a group or an object, and then it'll apply to it. But all that does is add that special apply to object link anyway. So I find it easier to put it inside here and then link it to the group. So now your chip moves with it, but it's not just hanging out on the outside, and it's kind of clearer that it's part of this group and is affecting that group. Because if you just stick it on the outside, then that could be affecting that object or the whole group, and you're not quite sure what's going on. So I'd probably do it this way. It's easier to know exactly what's happening. It's more like explicit. I'd like to thank Jack Power, Creator4983, Artinity DK, and all of my other supporters for making this tutorial possible. Check out TAPgiles.com to find out how you can support me in helping Dreams creators. Thanks for your consideration, and I'll see you in the next one.